Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of the Jets Life podcast. We're going to go here today. We're going to recap the Week 1 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, go over a couple of things there, and look forward to what will be a hopefully interesting game against the Buffalo Bills for Week 2. Hosting the Bills should be a good experience. Usually those games do come out pretty Jets play the Bills toughest out of all teams in the division, so hoping under a new regime that continues. But first things first, let's kind of go over briefly the Pittsburgh Steelers, give some highlights of this game, and obviously, kind of discuss what went wrong, what could be better moving forward, and some of the top performers in this game. I'll start with Darnell Membu. Against TJ Watt, going into this game, rookie playing his first start against an all-world defensive player. You were kind of expecting there to be some struggles, and he held his own pretty well. The Jets did a good job game planning, chipping TJ Watt. Membu even one-on-one held his own against TJ Watt, not allowing a sack in the entire game. I think he had 12 one-on-one reps against TJ Watt in this game, and obviously held his own. The offensive line as a whole was pretty strong in this game, giving Fields plenty of time to make decisions, open up plenty of running lanes for Breece Hall to take advantage of. Braylon Allen had a couple of nice runs as well. You'd like to see him kind of get a little step in the right direction. I think what would be critical for the Jets moving forward is that two-headed monster can kind of perform to the extent that eventually what we've seen in Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery and happening up in Detroit. So you're hoping to see that kind of take a step forward for the Jets. Looking at the chat here, Dane, appreciate you joining the chat. Appreciate you joining the show. And he's 100% right, guys. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It'd be a huge boost. But Dane, thank you for joining. But yeah, you look at this game, that offensive line played outstanding. It's a group that took a major hit before the season started with Elijah Vera-Tucker going down for the year. But they rebounded. And that says a lot about this coaching staff. I think you go from a coach in Robert Saleh who, it's been publicized after the Aaron Rodgers injury, reaching out to those in the media and explaining the Jets' struggles are as a result of the quarterback going down. And obviously any team is expected to take a step back when your starting quarterback goes down. But for Aaron Glenn and this coaching staff to lose arguably their best run blocker on the offensive line and come out with a performance against a strong Pittsburgh defensive line, it's a promising start for this offensive line, a young offensive line for the most part. 3/5 of those guys being on rookie deals. So strong performance there. Sauce Gardner, fresh off a huge contract extension, did his part in this game, contained DK Metcalf for the most part. He did have that one circus catch late in the game on the eventual game-winning field goal drive. But Sauce played that well. It was a game pinball. Once Sauce broke it up, hit off another member of the Steelers' hands and fell right into the lap of DK Metcalf. Nothing you can really do there in a situation like that. But the rest of the secondary leaves a lot to be desired. This secondary was pretty awful. Giving up 17 points in the fourth quarter. It really can't happen. Not when you have a 9-point lead going into the quarter. I know one of the drives they were already kind of knocking on the doorstep by the time the fourth quarter started. So that drive kind of started towards the tail end of the third quarter. But still, it's a situation you would like to see this team be able to finish up games, finish up an emotional game where that fan base showed up. I know it was kind of split 50-50 more or less. Jets and Steelers fans travel. I expect a lot of the same maybe in this Week 2 game with Buffalo fans being known to travel as well. Let's be real. The Jets haven't put enough out there to garner selling out their stadium. A couple years ago with the Aaron Rodgers trade, the fans showed up. They sold out a lot of games, but now it takes a step back when the team has lower expectations, as you would expect. But Another area I want to focus on is the Jets defensive line against Steelers offensive line. It's kind of a mixed bag when you look at it. Your top three guys, Quinnen, Jermaine, and Will McDonald, all performed pretty well. They'll perform really well in this game. Sharon, appreciate you hitting that like button. More people do the same. But and you know, the rest of the defensive line, more or less, these players are there to be primary run defenders. But I would like to see a little bit more out of Leonard Taylor in this game, or just anything at all. I don't even know if he played many snaps in this game. He's a guy who could be your third pass rusher. I would have liked him seeing him late in the game, especially when the Steelers trying to drive down for an eventual game-winning field goal. You would like to see more pressure on the Steelers in this game. But yeah, late in the game, it just seemed like every single pass attempt, every single target was where's Brandon Stevens, and finding him. Calvin Austin had an outstanding game. He beat Brandon Stevens a couple times late in the second quarter. That led to a touchdown drive there. Beat him a couple times in the fourth quarter, leading to a touchdown and eventually a game-winning field goal. You can't have that. Brandon Stevens was brought in here on a big money contract to be opposite Sauce Gardner. It was a decision I didn't really understand at the time. Would have liked to see the Jets go in a different direction potentially there. But the Jets have some options behind him. Azaria Thomas, a guy that drafted in the third round, could be someone you look at later in the year if these struggles continue. But until now, I mean, it's struggled because everything you heard about Brandon Stevens has kind of showed its ugly face in a week one performance. You'd like to see a little bit better out of him. But yeah, the secondary as a whole, outside of Sauce Gardner, needs to drastically improve. Tony Adams, there's a play early in the game, third and long. All you got to do is go up there and at least kind of force DK Metcalf. And I know DK Metcalf is a physical beast. I wouldn't expect Tony Adams to tackle him, but you're also not just going to – DK Metcalf is going to also quit. You got to go up there. You got to put some pressure, allow your support to get there. There was no effort there. He just kind of stood there, got into a stance, and DK just walked around him for an easy first down. You can't have that. This team needs to tackle better. Michael Carter had another situation. I think it was also DK Metcalf on that route as well. It's just the tackling has to be better, has to be more aggressive, and it's just not acceptable. You're not gonna win games if you're not gonna make a tackle, especially when you got a guy standing there waiting to see what your next move is. Obviously, the big storyline of the week, Xavier Gipson getting released. I think this screams out what Jet fans and what we've all kind of been hoping for as this coaching staff is accountability and actually standing behind it. We've heard accountability many a times under the Robert Saleh era. When Jeff Ulbrich took over, accountability was a word that got thrown out there, but I never really felt the accountability was taking place. This an immediate impact on the locker room. You want to be on this team. You want to contribute to what we hope will eventually be a successful era under Aaron Glenn. Well, turnovers and being careless with the football is not acceptable. And Xavier Gipson had the costly fumble in this game. Obviously, that after the Steelers scored their first touchdown in the fourth quarter, gave up the fumble, and the Steelers scored another touchdown. 2 touchdowns in 50 seconds as a result of a turnover. When this offense was doing everything possible to move the ball down the field, I mean, you stole a possession from Justin Fields in this offense that could have led to points. And in this game where it ended a 2-point deficit, obviously points are critical in every single game. But outside of that, I mean, a lot of people want to poke at the fact that maybe Aaron Glenn is being rash with this decision. I mean, I don't even know if it got on the stat sheet or not, but Xavier Gipson had another return earlier in the game where he simply tripped. It didn't look like he tripped over a player. A player of the Steelers, that is. I think he just physically tripped, put the ball on the ground, and luckily one of his teammates got there and recovered it. It wasn't made to be a big deal, but there's an argument there that, he's sleeping on that. He puts the ball on the ground. It could have been considered a fumble. That it's just the carelessness that he's kind of had over the last couple of years. And this obviously was the last straw for Aaron Glenn, who in his first game, the issues we all saw out of Xavier Gipson kind of creeped their heads in this game as well. So again, it's just an issue with like the common things that have happened over the course of his career kind of continuing and not getting better. So the Jets are a team that's looking to kind of get rid of any of the old noise. Xavier Gipson's release is every bit worth it at this point. The Jets need to go in a different direction. Pritchett was a guy that a lot of Jet fans were excited about to see if he can have an opportunity with this team, and maybe he does now. The Jets brought in a few guys in for the week for workouts. I believe signed a couple to the practice squad. So we'll see where it goes from here. But hopefully, eventually, this leads to a Pritchett call-up because Jet fans will be super excited about that. And how fitting it would be if a rookie comes in, undrafted rookie, against Buffalo to kind of rekindle that old magic that Xavier Gipson was so well known for, a move that basically gave the guy a 3-year NFL career. Big thing I want to talk about here is the outlook on this game and how this coaching staff performed as a whole. A lot of unknowns, obviously. A lot of Jet fans picking this team to win 7 or 8 games, possibly less, possibly more, but I think 7 is probably like the sweet spot number that we all kind of fall in line with. And a big reason for that is the unknowns. I mean, this is a team that going into last year, a lot of us believed had Super Bowl aspirations with Aaron Rodgers there, with a strong defense. But you lose Aaron Rodgers, you lose, a few players on that defense. That was such a powerful unit in 2022 and in 2023. You lose a lot of pieces, and all of a sudden things change. You bring in a new quarterback whose career has been kind of a question mark, and a new coaching staff who, just a lot of unknowns. An offensive coordinator that's never called plays before, a head coach who's never been in that position as a head coach before, but has some history as a team leader, as a player in this league. And you just want to see how those things shaped out and how Aaron Glenn performed in his first real opportunity in a game-like situation. And if this team was bringing out, if you were seeing something different out of this team, were you seeing something better, or were you seeing a lot of the same? And I think there are certain aspects of this that you could say, there's still some undisciplined activities happening on this team that needs to be corrected. There was a delay of game. There was a 12 men on the field, certain things like that. They did have a false start. But 2 penalties that in this game that kind of pop everyone's eyes are the personal foul on John Simpson late in the half. That one, I mean, you look at that play and Jets were driving down the field. We're at midfield, they were around midfield. Justin Fields, I think it was like 9 seconds left or something like that, and Justin Fields gets hit by, I want to say it was Ramsey, gets hit, and then John Simpson goes to defend his quarterback, headbutts Ramsey. And I think the headbutt is what did it, more or less. I would have liked it if maybe he just got to Ramsey's face and, kind of puts that intimidation factor out there without the headbutt. I think the headbutt is what kind of threw it across the top. I do like him standing up for his quarterback. I think that's something that with Zach Wilson being here was a major issue. I feel like this offensive line didn't do enough to protect him. Obviously, for a varying number of reasons. But I got to pop up Sharon's note here. I think we win at least 9 games and maybe make the playoffs. But I'm feeling a little senile. Listen, 9 wins for this team would be outstanding. Playoffs would be outrageous. I would be 100% for it. I think that, I mean, realistically, and we'll go into like where this goes here, but the Jets have a tough slate of games coming up here over the next few weeks. I got to see where they're at week 5 before I jump there. I still sit around 7 or 8 wins. But you know what? Football's a game of bounces. And, you look at this first game, for example. The ball hit the ground 3 times, and the Steelers recovered it every single time. Jets recovered 2 of those fumbles. You're talking about a completely different game. It's about jumping on the football. Steelers had a kick return that the ball got on the ground. And I think, late the touchdown drive, late in the second quarter, the ball hit the ground on an outside handoff. Guy got laid out, ball hit the ground. You're talking about a situation where in those Steelers lose a touchdown on that drive, and it's a completely different game at that point. Dane, after a measly 4 quarters, have you also forgiven Brees? I was never really against Brees. I think the issue with Brees has been strictly the offensive line. Now, I don't necessarily think that I think Brees would be a player that needs the space. You know what I mean? And then most players do, but certain players are able to gain yardage that in situations where maybe the yardage isn't there. And I think that's an issue that Brees has maybe. In a situation where Brees has space, he can be dynamic and, be an elite runner. We saw it in his rookie year. We saw it in this game. He had plenty of space, and he was able to capitalize on it for 150 all-purpose yards, rushing and receiving as a whole. But my realistic thought on Brees Hall, I don't know that he's here long term at this point. Maybe it's a situation where they can work something out, but I don't know with his injury history, and maybe he just has an outstanding year this year where the Jets view him as like their primary guy, their version of Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense. Maybe they see that in Brees, and it's hard to find players like that, but see him hit a home run at least. I mean, I would love to see it too. Had a couple of big runs this game. These things are going to take time, but I think something's coming. Hopefully in this game. Let's not forget that first game against the Bills coming out of the year. He was, just electric that game. I don't know what's happened. Obviously Keith Carter has a lot to do with it as far as what's happened to Brees Hall since his rookie year, since that first game. Nate Hackett not knowing that he's a good catcher as well as the football. A lot of different factors there. I would expect, based on what we've seen out of Tanner Engstrand in his first game, you're going to see a lot more out of Brees Hall. And the Jets really have no choice. When you look at this team as a whole, outside of Garrett Wilson on the offense, who are you looking for to make big plays? And that player has to be Brees Hall. Mason Taylor is another player that could potentially work his way into a role, but he's a rookie. You don't know what to expect out of a rookie, especially tight ends. You're taking on a lot more than maybe you were in college, because obviously you need to have a well-rounded game as a tight end in the NFL. But you see stories of tight ends every single year coming out and having outstanding starts. And it's not even just the guys at the top of the draft like Tyler Warren and Brock Bowers. It's not just those type of situations. Sam Laporta, keep going back to referencing the Detroit Lions, because that's really what you have to do with this team. You got to look at them and say, the Jets are a mirror image of what the Detroit Lions were early in the process for Dan Campbell and staff. And Aaron Glenn brings a lot of Detroit here with him, and those mentalities. He's trying to build this team the way that it was built in Detroit, because he sees what it takes: a strong offensive line, a strong running game with multiple running backs that can do different things. I have a lot of faith in Brees Hall. I think he'll do something here. Do I think he's here long term? I would like to see him here long term. I just don't know that the Jets go in that direction with his contract year coming up, with an injury history, especially a knee injury. With running backs, it's usually a major red flag. But he's also very young, still even to this day. We'll see what happens there. But I never really gave up on Brees. I also think the hype towards Brees is a little bit higher than maybe it garners. But when he gets the ball in space, look out. He's a guy that could take it the distance, and we know that because of his 4.4 speed. But again, this coaching staff coming out there, I would say that the part that I'm concerned on, obviously, as we all should be, is the defensive side of things. Obviously, Aaron Glenn has given those reins to Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator, but Aaron Glenn comes here with a history as a defensive coordinator. Don't like to see week one for a defensive-minded guy to come in and get up 34 points and 17 points in the fourth quarter to an aging Aaron Rodgers and a Pittsburgh offense that I mean, outside DK Metcalf, I mean, really doesn't have much to be desired. That's probably my biggest concern here. And you have the Bills coming in. NFL's a weird game. It's a week-to-week league. Just give up 32 points to Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers one week, and then turn around and get up 20 points to Buffalo and Josh Allen. I don't think that's to be the case. I think it's going to be high-scoring game on Buffalo's behalf, but we'll see how it goes. Dane, another chat. Appreciate you being active in the chat, Dane, as you always are. So much appreciation there. Solid take. Thoughts on Schefter speculating that the Lions were bad because they let Enstrand walk, and it was a mistake. I think we all kind of have seen the Green Bay Packers here for 2 weeks now. That defense is legit. That team as a whole is legit. I think when you're looking at this 2 weeks into the season, they're up there with the Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles have to be taken down, but I would say going into this, you probably put the Packers as the number 2 team in the NFC right now. I mean, you look at the NFC South, you got Tampa down there. I don't view them as better than Green Bay. The NFC North, maybe Minnesota, but I think Green Bay in a head-to-head matchup has a little bit more than Minnesota at this time. We saw Minnesota struggling against Chicago, eventually turning it around. But Green Bay has a 3-year starting quarterback. They've got an elite defense now with an elite pass rusher, and Packers have done this formula multiple times now. It's a formula that's worked for them. Find your franchise quarterback in the draft, allow them to sit behind a Hall of Fame quarterback for a couple of years, and when you're ready, go out there and find yourself an elite pass rusher. Did it with Favre. They brought in Reggie White. They did it with Aaron Rodgers. They drafted Clay Matthews, who turned out to be a 10-plus sack player and an elite defender. And now they're doing here again with Jordan Love, as he's become familiar with the LaFleur offense. He's a solid quarterback in this league. They paid him for it. I thought maybe paying him a little bit prematurely, but they had no choice after the Rodgers trade. And bring in Micah Parsons and really round out that defense as a whole. McKinney back there, they put some resources into that defense. That linebacking group is solid. That secondary was not letting anything happen. Jane Daniels had a terrible game. They kept him in check, and Micah Parsons being a big reason for that. So I think part of the Lions' struggles have to do with maybe the defense they played in week 1. I'd like to see the Lions this week. I'm not sure who they go head-to-head against this week. But I think the Lions are going to be a team that continues. They still have a strong offensive line. I'm not sure who's calling the plays there now. Obviously, Ben Johnson's gone. They lost probably the guy that they would have put in that spot in Tanner Enstrand. Although I think there's like rules around like letting an OC go. I think it has to be like there's something weird where like you have to be promoted to head coach in order to be like, I mean, team can grant permission, whatever, but I would find it a little strange for Detroit to let a player, let a guy that they believe to be the OC walk out. But, and I'm looking it up as we speak here for see what the offensive coordinator is. Sorry, no earthquake, guys. I just bumped my computer stand. John Morton. Why does that name sound familiar? But I'll look into that a little bit more and give some more feedback on that. Sharon commented on my view on the Packers. Be a good first half team, and then something will make them slip, probably 9-8. I mean, NFL is a crazy game. A team can look outstanding one week and then look terrible the next, look completely different. And that could be the case, but I like what the Packers are built around. They're built around a strong defense now, a strong running game, and they have a quarterback that can make the throws. I think that travels well. I think when you're looking at a team that I would have these concerns with, would be a team that maybe like the Dolphins, for example, would be a perfect example. A few years back when Tua kind of had his coming out party and that offense was putting up crazy amount of points, 70-point game against Denver. When they were doing that at the time, and they were running the ball well too. Achane had a good few games down that stretch as well. They were running the ball effectively, but I think what they were lacking in that period of time was a strong power run game. Their offensive line had some good guys there that eventually left in free agency, and they haven't been able to rebuild that interior offensive line the way it once was. They've kind of taken the approach of building on the outside in, which, I mean, can work, but you usually want to build your offensive line first. They had a good offensive line, let players walk out the door, and then, obviously there's that team is looking to implode at any point now. So the Dolphins are a team that, couldn't fare the cold weather, being a warm weather team and not having that strong power run game. When you're built off finesse, I guess would be like the way of saying it. When it gets to late in the season, then that finesse kind of transitions over to maybe being a soft team. That's kind of the issue with the Dolphins. I don't know if the Packers look like that kind of team. I think they look like a team that, they're for them to be successful, they're going to run the football with Josh Jacobs and behind that strong offensive line, and they're going to play some strong defense. And those defenders are flying around the football. It's outstanding. The game slows down a little bit in later in the year, so we'll see if this defense is still running on with their heads on fire like they were in the first couple of games. But I don't disagree. I mean, the Packers still have to show us a lot. Jordan Love still has to show us a little bit more. But I mean, I that's my opinion. I think the Packers are a team that could challenge in the NFC for sure. But we'll see. It's a long season. My opinions could be completely different here in a couple of weeks if Packers play horribly these next few weeks, especially on the road now. To play a couple of home games, now they go on the road. Alrighty. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I stand with this coaching staff. I think they kind of, had this team ready and prepared to play. Would like this defense to be a little bit more ready and prepared and continuing that down the stretch. I mean, they had a strong first three quarters. I mean, they got beat down late in the half. That late touchdown was a killer. That kind of hurt because the Jets were going in the half with a 9-point lead. Steelers got the ball first out of the half. It would have been nice to go into the half with a 9-point lead, or best case scenario, I think the Steelers had the ball with like 3 minutes left. I want to say it was a second and long before Calvin Austin got hit on the side for what was like a 20-yard gain or something like that. Would have liked it if the Jets maybe got the ball back and instead of a 9-point lead going to half, getting the ball, getting down to field goal range, talking about a 12-point lead, almost a 2-touchdown lead. But instead, you give a touchdown. Now, it's a big swing. 10-point potential swing on that series. So, Aaron Glenn has said in multiple press conferences now. He said it even today in his press conference at 11 o'clock. The last 4 minutes of the half in the game, or last 5 minutes, whatever he said, are behind the coach. And when you look at that side of it, and I'm not going to sit here and say Aaron Glenn lost the coaching battle because the last 4 minutes were heavily outside of his favor. But he was going up against a top flight head coach in Mike Tomlin, and you would expect the coaching, to be in Pittsburgh's favor. And obviously it was. Pittsburgh won a game where they scored, 10 points within inside of 2 minutes, had a big fourth quarter, 17 points. So big things there, but things to improve on. This team is not ready for the big time. They're not ready for, I don't necessarily view this as a playoff team. They're a team that could get lucky in a few situations and find themselves in the playoff situation, which would be outstanding. That would be give Glenn Coach of the Year or something like that happens. I just don't see that with the way this team is right now, but they're built with the right stuff. They're built with a strong offensive line. That defense needs to be better in order for 9 wins to be a realistic thought in my process at this moment. If that defense is, top half of the league and this offensive line is performing the way it did in week one down the stretch, you do expect them to get better. they're still a very, very young offensive line with Joe Tippmann playing a right guard, with Olu on the left side, Membo on the right. They're a very young offensive line. You expect them to get better. And if they do get better, and this defense improves, then you can start looking at the schedule and saying, is there an avenue to 9, possibly even 10 wins to make the playoffs? But today, I don't see that. I don't see at this point. But again, opinions change week to week in the NFL. The teams you thought were good coming into the year, some of them are going to fall out. Teams you thought were going to be terrible, someone's going to pump up. Hopefully the Jets are one of those teams that exceeds expectations. That's what you're hoping for. I have a new coaching staff because, let's be real, a lot of reasons why people are calling them for 7 wins is because of the unknowns. Justin Fields, Aaron Glenn, Tanner Engstrand, a lot of unknowns, and that results in putting them right in the middle of the pack, a team that many believe to be Super Bowl contenders a couple years ago. So we move forward to week 2. Spent a good 30 minutes. I call this a brief recap, I believe in my message, but love the comments, love the engagement. If you have anything, feel free to comment. Happy to, touch on anyone's comments, touch on anyone's thoughts. There's a Jets chat, so if there's something you want to get off your mind, happy to kind of touch on those things. So feel free to put anything out there, and I'll try my best to answer your questions and as honest and straightforward as I can. But here we go into week 2 versus the Buffalo Bills, and Bills coming off a strong win, a game that they were down huge in the last few minutes of the quarter of the game. Josh Allen, a couple touchdowns, and eventually leading to the game-winning field goal. But when you look at that game, obviously it's an impressive win for the Bills. Opening week of the season against the Ravens, a team that's, during the regular season has taken care of business against them, whereas the other way around, I think the Bills have taken over the Ravens in the playoffs. It's basically the opposite of what the Kansas City Chiefs have been. Bills have been successful against the Chiefs in the regular season, but can't get past them in the playoffs. Well, the Ravens are basically the opposite of that for the Bills. Ravens usually have success in the regular season, not so much in the postseason. Yes, and I did actually see that alert from I think Adam Schefter was the first one on it. Maybe it was Ian. But yeah, no Ed Oliver in this game is going to be a huge factor. Ed Oliver was ginormous for the Bills in this game. I believe he was the one who had the strip sack on the Derrick Henry run. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was him on the strip sack late in the game. But Ed Oliver was all over the field in this game, and he's turning. I mean, you talk about that draft, Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver. There was a lot of chit chat about Bills trying to trade up to get Ed Oliver or to get Quinnen Williams, and the Jets falling back because they looked at Ed Oliver as a pretty solid secondary option. Both have been outstanding in their careers. Ed Oliver getting a little more praise on that because of the team he's playing for, but he's been outstanding. The Bills are getting their money's worth out of him. That contract looks better and better each and every day. But it's a weird player, a player with a small stature. He gets his pad level low, and he just blows up plays, and it's really impressive what Ed Oliver has eventually turned into. Player that really creeped up the draft boards the year that he was eventually drafted. I don't know that he was slated as a top 10 pick going into that draft. I think he kind of worked his way into it based on his pre-draft performances, and obviously has been every bit worth his draft stock and the contract they gave him. But yeah, Ed Oliver being out is a critical thing for the Jets that they need to capitalize on. I'm hearing the key matchups for the Jets and Bills. I think actually it leads me to my first point. I didn't know where I had this slated on my list, but here we go. Jets running game versus the Bills defensive line. Jets offensive line was outstanding against a strong Pittsburgh Steelers unit week 1. Hayward could say that he wasn't maybe prepared as much as he could have been because of the missed time, because of the contracts dispute, whatever have you. But regardless, he was getting pushed around. This entire Steelers defensive line was getting pushed around. This offensive line has some push. They have some big boys there, and when you lose AVT for the year and a guy that you viewed to be your top run blocker, I had our weekly AFC Shakedown show on Bills Mafia Reports channel. If you haven't been on there, it's a fun time. Got Curtis, a Miami Dolphins fan, Captain D, also a Miami Dolphins fan, Tommy from Bills Mafia, and Juan, he's a Patriots fan, covering the Patriots as well. We all kind of give our dives and stuff like that. But really good time. And I talked about the loss of AVT on this team, and the thing I was talking about is I don't know what to expect next. I knew more or less what the Jets were planning on doing was move over Joe Tittman to right guard, move just move Myers to starting center, and have it be there. But I thought you were taking a major hit, losing your top offensive lineman. And the thing I kind of said might be neutral is if Hayward doesn't figure out his contract situation. You're talking about basically a net, a neutral situation there. But the morning of the game, reports that he had settled on his contract. He was playing. It kind of moved things out, and that's a big time player there to be on the field. And for this Jets offensive line to control the game against Steelers defensive line was huge. And now you're in a situation where you've seen what that offensive line can do after 1 week. There's tape on them now, so I'm not going to sit here and say that that's an expectation week to week, but it is. One of the things that usually translates week after week is a strong offensive line. A strong offensive line usually carries over week to week. This offensive line isn't going to figure out how to play football. At least I hope not. Some do. Tyron Smith definitely forgot how to play football when he was playing for the Jets last year. But the loss of Ed Oliver is a critical thing here for the Bills that you would like to see this Jets offensive line take advantage of, and I really expect them to. And when I talk about like the expectations with this Jets team, it's really got to be a situation here where if they're looking to try and squeeze out a win against this Bills team, the time of possession has to be tilted. It really does need to be on a major tilt, and I think that's going back to Robert Saleh days, obviously not much success there. But going back to the Rex Ryan days, that was his recipe. Playing in the division with Tom Brady, the key to winning games was to control the clock, run the football, play strong defense, keep the game within one score in the fourth quarter, and have your playmakers make the plays when needed. And if you do those things, chances are things are going to work out for the best for you. We should win this one in the trenches. You would like to think so. The one area I'd like to see a little bit more when you're talking about winning in the trenches on the offense side of the ball, we should win this one. Bills defensive line struggled in week 1, stopping the run. Obviously, Derrick Henry ran crazy, Lamar Jackson ran crazy, but they do that against every team. So it's hard to see whether or not that was a figment of just Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, or if this Bills defensive line. Bills are coached by Sean McDermott. I would expect them to put a decent defense out there. So it's going to be up to Jets to perform and work and continue to build off of what they did in week 1. But on the offense, Bills have a strong offensive line, and this Jets defensive line, it's a strength on this defense for sure. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, Quinton Williams. You got some strong run defenders there in Jawan Briggs and Harrison Phillips. Some strong run defense there. I probably lean Bills in that department. That's a strong offensive line unit that's been doing it for a few years now. But it's gonna be a fun game to watch. If you're someone who likes offensive line play, defensive line play, this is your game. Watch this game and have some fun because it'll be a fun one. And hopefully, that this Jets offensive line gets some push going. I think that's gonna be the factor. I think when you look at it, Bills offensive line versus Jets defensive line, Jets are gonna win some, Bills are gonna win some. the Jets should dominate on the offense side of the ball. They should be pushing and pounding this football out the Bills' throats because, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, for the Jets to win this game, I think that this time of possession has to be on complete tilt. It's got to be something like 30, 35, 25, or something like that. And that's a huge tilt in time of possession. It's nothing like Rex Ryan in some of his games, 40 minutes time of possession with that strong ground and pound game. But that was also a defense that basically didn't let you get a first down on any of your drives with Revis out there and Cromartie and strong defensive unit, the good old days. Times where football was fun. But now I had some fun week one. I don't know how you Jet fans feel. Obviously, you want to win games. Let me know your thoughts on week one. I mean, were you impressed with what you saw? Were you disappointed? Obviously, we're all disappointed about the loss, but it's promising. Is kind of where I would get at. So, talk about the good Jets with this running game against the Bills' defensive line. I'm going to go with the bad here. Brandon Stephens versus what I would think would be Khalil Shakir. And the reason why, and I know they have a few other receiving options. Calvin Austin, a smaller, faster receiver, shifty, really gave Stephens fits. I would expect the Bills and Joe Brady to take a look at this and say, is that the matchup? Because Stephens isn't terrible in coverage. He gives up a lot of catches, which defines terrible in coverage, but he's usually around the football, which is positive. He's around the football. He just doesn't make plays on the football. So when you get a bigger guy out there and he's around the football, you can kind of match up a little bit better, but he seems to really struggle against smaller receivers, and Shakir kind of fits that bill here. I would, if I'm the Bills and I'm calling offensive shots, I'm moving Shakir around the lineup and putting him, getting a matchup with him and Stephens one-on-one, because that will be a matchup nightmare. The Bills will win that matchup plenty of times. It's just Stephens is alarming. Stephens is alarming. Tony Adams is alarming. Michael Carter had a missed tackle in this game. The secondary needs to take a look at that game, watch that film, and realize the things that they need to work on. And let's be real, you got to fix them fast. The Bills are not going to be a team that's going to allow you to learn on the fly. You better improve, and you better get this shit figured out, because Bills will take advantage of every single weakness you have on defense with Josh Allen back there, and things can get ugly. Things get ugly really fast. But we've also seen the bad side of Josh Allen, especially in MetLife. So for the best. MetLife has given this guy problems, and a lot of his showings there. So hopefully the Jets have one more in them here at MetLife in Aaron Glenn's big game. And it'd be a statement win if they can figure something out here. I don't see it personally. I'd love to see it, but after that showing by Glenn by Josh Allen week one, it's hard to see his team as one that will lose. Sharon, loving the engagement. Some good comments here. Keep them coming. AJ probably a long talk with Stephens and Adams. I would assume so. Aaron Glenn has already proven he's no BS. You screw up, you make a mistake. You're gonna pay for it in one way or another. Xavier Gipson, a prime example. Put that ball on the ground in a close game. You have to risk hitting the chop block, and it sucks for Xavier Gipson. But I gotta be real. I don't know what he was doing on the team to begin with. Maybe it had something to do with the kind of thinness of the wide receiver group, trying to find someone, a gadget guy that can make some plays, whatever. But that fumble was costly. It was terrible. Can't have that. And Sharon, you were above. You mentioned this earlier about the trenches. I'll bring that back up here now too. Your comment from earlier, just because it kind of falls in line with where I was eventually going to get to. Should win this one in the trenches. Again, good comments, Sharon. I really appreciate you in the chat. Jets interior D line versus the Bills interior offensive line. This is where I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I mentioned a lot of the names earlier on the Jets side, but they got some good run defenders there now. And I got to give Muji and or Aaron Glenn. I think it's Aaron Glenn really calling the shots for the most part. That was some impressive stuff from a talent acquisition standpoint. Late in training camp to find two strong run defenders that late in the game and at marginal cost for a couple of 6th-round picks. And I think one kicked back to 7th or whatever it was. Whatever. Let's just say it cost the Jets 2 6th-round picks. To find two pretty decent, defensive linemen that are strong in run defense, an area where the Jets struggled last year, to kind of turn what was probably going to be a weakness going into the season into a not that bad type of situation. We were minutes away from potentially having Jay Tufele as your second best interior defensive lineman. That's obviously not something that you're looking for. But now you're about 5 deep when you consider Leonard Taylor back there as well. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I would like to see in this game a shift towards Leonard Taylor a little bit more in passing situations, and maybe he did have a little bit more. I'd have to look at his snap count, but it didn't look like he was out there much. But I feel like when he's out there, you kind of get a little sense of him. He's strong in pass rush, and maybe this is the game to bring it out, especially against Josh Allen. While you don't want Josh Allen to get outside the pocket, I think with these guys on the edge, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, I think with these guys on the edge, this might be a situation where if you can bring the pressure inside and force him to kind of work his way outside, Jermaine Johnson's quick enough, and we've seen him, one-on-one with Josh Allen getting a critical sack in his rookie year against the Bills. Obviously, it was a big play in that game. We've seen him control that, and Will McDonald is just a freak off the edge. I talked about this last week on my show with Tommy on the AFC Shakedown. I view this guy as a huge X factor in that game, and obviously he was 2 sacks in that game. But I expect huge things out of him for this season. His frame, I don't know if it's just a number change, but when he's wearing 9, he looks super trim, super lean. And he has more power too. I know that and maybe someone can correct me on this too, but early in the offseason, there was comments, I think it was Rich Cimini, someone reached out to Aaron Glenn in one of his press conferences and asked about Will McDonald's size, and is that a concern of his being more of a speed rusher versus a power rusher? And you saw some of that power in this game. I think it was on one of the sacks too, where he just kind of powered Broderick Jones back a little bit and eventually lead to a sack. So I don't know if that was, something that anyone has recalled. But I think that was pretty remarkable to see out of Will McDonald. If he adds power to his game, you're talking about a guy who could turn 10 sacks into, maybe like 13, 14 sack season, which is huge for a guy that, let's be real, a lot of Jet fans were not happy with the pick, myself included, at the time. He's turned out to be a really, really good pass rusher for this team. And again, love the number change. Danny Odell, appreciate you joining the chat. Noah Oliver is huge. I just hope our secondary can stop letting up massive chunk plays. Yeah, I was talking about this earlier today. Actually, I'm not sure when you started up here, but I talked about it earlier with Brandon Stevens. And I think what's going to be a critical matchup in this game, Danny, is going to be Brandon Stevens versus the smaller receiver, Khalil Shakir. I think the Bills are going to look for that matchup. Calvin Austin had a day against Brandon Stevens. I would watch out if I'm Brandon Stevens and if I'm this coaching staff, making sure that if Khalil Shakir is in the vicinity of Brandon Stevens, you either switch him up somehow or you try and avoid that matchup at all costs. I think if Stevens is out there and he's one-on-one with maybe a bigger receiver like Keon Coleman potentially, maybe he can keep up with them and limit the damage. But a guy like Khalil Shakir with that swiftiness, I think that's going to be a problem, a major problem for this defense. I have major issues with this secondary. Tony Adams, Cisco, I'm not crazy about either. Michael Carter missing a tackle. I brought this up earlier too. This team's got to be better in the secondary. The secondary plays was the difference in this game, and I think it's easy to point that out. And that's why it's kind of a promising week one performance. I think that's probably what makes a lot of Jet fans not as miserable and as grumpy as maybe we would be in other scenarios. Secondary issues are usually correctable. Now, obviously, you have terrible secondary. There's nothing you can do about it, which maybe that's the case. But secondary issues, especially communication issues, like the Calvin Austin touchdown after the Xavier Gipson fumble, that's a communication breakdown. That wasn't someone getting beat. I mean, obviously someone got beat, but for him to screech across the field like that, there was a communication breakdown somewhere. Those things are usually correctable. And when you have a strong defensive line unit, history has shown in the NFL, strong defensive lines allow the secondary to work on their chemistry and work on their communication. And if you can keep the ship afloat, then eventually your defense is gonna get better down the stretch. That's something that has kind of been, it's been proven before that's the case. You can't go from a weak defensive line to all of a sudden have a strong defensive line because you have a strong secondary. It's usually a strong defensive line makes your secondary a lot better than maybe they would be on paper because it buys them time and time to develop as well as a unit. Sharing a couple chats here. I'll try and get to both of them here. Clemens will have his one good game against Deion Dawkins. I would love to see it, especially the history those two guys have. Michael Clemens has been awful for this team. And he wasn't. The problem is he's kind of stuck on this roster because they're kind of thin at edge when you get behind the key guys. But I would love for Clemens to kind of have a big game just this one time against Deion Dawkins and shut that guy up for once would be outstanding. But I don't see that as being a thing. Dawkins is a strong offensive lineman. He's not going to let that happen. But would love to see it still. Yeah, Stevens. It's the thing that's frustrating about the Stevens situation is whatever you knew about him before the contract was signed showed its face in week one. And you would like to see a situation where and again, he can still improve, but when a player has a reputation of kind of always being around the football but never getting his head around and not playing the football, which leads to catches, when that's his reputation coming into a new team, into a new culture type of situation, when that's his reputation and the new coaching staff gets their hands on him, especially a former defensive back gets his hands on him, works with him a little bit, tries to improve him in those areas, and in the very first game in critical crunch time, those same issues are the reason why he's not succeeding. It's a major red flag. It becomes a situation where, the Jets could potentially find themselves some buyer's remorse. Now, what I will say, and I think I mentioned this earlier too, is the beauty of the way the Jets attacked the draft is they did get a guy in the third round who, by many accounts had second round potential. Is he ready? I don't know. But should these struggles continue, I would, and Aaron Glenn has shown he's not shy of pulling the trigger. Is it a situation where, if these struggles continue, you can't keep losing games? Aaron Glenn talks about wanting to put a product on the field that the fans can be proud of. Well, we're not going to be proud of Brandon Stevens for very long if he's given up chunk plays the way he did in week one. Just not going to be acceptable. Needs to do better. background. Got a couple of chats coming in quick here. Maybe we move Oliver and Moore. I'm pretty sure you're talking about Malachi Moore in for Tony Adams, or not sure, Oliver. But yeah, Malachi Moore is obviously another situation to keep an eye on. Tony Adams is a safety that can't tackle, and that's alarming. He shouldn't be starting. And a good option out there would be nice. I mean, he doesn't play terribly in the back end. I mean, he's someone you can have out there a little bit, but yeah, I don't think the Jets are far off from Azaria Thomas and Malachi Moore playing some downs. That's my opinion there. But yeah, Gyro, appreciate the chat. Keep them coming. Relic 27, though the Jets ain't going to win. They just played hard because it was against Aaron Rodgers. Downfall will resume this weekend. I don't know Aaron Rodgers being the reason they played hard. That offensive line pushed the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line off the ball. I don't know how Aaron Rodgers being on the opposite side of the field has anything to do with that, really. Maybe there was some added motivation, sure, but Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line wasn't just letting motivation push them off the rock like it did. So I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, but maybe added motivation because of Rodgers being on the other side. But no one's I have yet to say anything about the Jets winning this game. I think the channel's headline says, "Can the Jets and their new identity stun the Bills?" I'm just painting a picture here, guys, of what it might take for the Jets to pull out a victory. Will it happen? I've already kind of put my things out there, but I'll give a game prediction here at the end of this whole thing. But my next big matchup here, Garrett Wilson versus Christian Benford. Garrett Wilson had an outstanding week one. Justin Fields, obviously a lot of trust in his former college teammate. I really do expect that to kind of proceed here, continue. Garrett Wilson, in year 3 now? Year four, is looking every bit the part of what you're expecting out of a number one wide receiver. Would have loved to see him holding that fourth down catch, but he got laid out right away. Would like to see that ball get there maybe a second earlier and give him a chance to kind of operate with the football instead of kind of lollipopping it and letting him get hit. That was a concern in that play, but Garrett Wilson against Christian Benford, strong DB versus strong wide receiver one. They're probably be lined up pretty routinely in this game. What I do like about Tanner Engstrand and what he's doing with Garrett Wilson is he's moving him around a lot in the slot. I think on most plays, Garrett Wilson's in motion. That's outstanding. I don't know what the heck Nate Hackett was doing. I never felt like Garrett Wilson was moving in motion enough as he should be. When defenses go into a game, they're usually looking for the team's top guy, someone that can strike fear in a defense coordinator. Let them, you always hear the phrase of defense are going to have trouble sleeping at night when they have a matchup. Well, Garrett Wilson is that guy. So when you keep him in one spot, like the Jets were doing in previous years, it's not, you're basically handcuffing yourself. But when you now force the defense to keep their eyes on this guy for, every single play, and you're moving guys in motion, you're moving Breece Hall around, you're moving the motion has been from Tanner Engstrand week one. The play design has been outstanding. I really loved what I saw out of the Jets in week one. I hope that continues. But the play design, the moving the guys around, it's been outstanding. And I think that I'd like to see that continue. Keep defenses guessing. And then you have a guy in Justin Fields. When teams are just looking for Breece Hall, looking for Garrett Wilson, they got to keep their eyes on a quarterback that can get a big run at any point in time. Sorry. But yeah. Garrett Wilson, love to see this matchup. Love to see him kind of take another step in the right direction and being an elite receiver. He's a top receiver in my mind, but hasn't shown nearly enough for the rest of the league to understand how valuable he is. And the things he's saying in his press conferences, the leadership is clear as day for this player. Love what the Jets got out of him. Now I like that they brought a quarterback that can maybe bring out the best in him. All right, we'll keep this thing going. Gyro. Even seeing LaFleur's first game was odd. Tanner called a good game first. Yeah. Tanner had a good game. I like LaFleur. LaFleur was handcuffed by the quarterback. I think I honestly believe that. LaFleur called outstanding games with Mike White at quarterback. Let's not forget that. Joe Flacco had 300-yard games. Who's the other quarterback that I'm trying to think of? He's been around the league for a while. Can't think of his name, but I think he even had a 300-yard game. Who was it? I forget his name. But they had another quarterback in there for a little bit of time that it was just Zach. Zach couldn't figure it out. And obviously he's on his third team now in the Dolphins. I think he got some playing time this week, actually. I don't know what his final stat line ended up being, but then the Dolphins put him in garbage time after getting destroyed by the Colts, which that was a game I saw happening. Dolphins losing. I did not see 33-8 happening. I thought it would be a close game and Dolphins would choke it at the end. I did not see that happening. Dolphins are in trouble. I truly believe that that's the situation. Josh Johnson. Thank you. Appreciate it. You got me. Appreciate it when the chat helps me out when I'm obviously drawing blanks. It's much appreciated, guys. Alrighty. So now let's go into our offensive, defensive X factors going into this game. And then I'll give my prediction and see what happens. We're 2 days away from the second game of the season. These games start kind of working their ways out, and hopefully we'll see what happens. So I'll start with the offensive side of the football. Offensive X factor in this game. Listen, week one, a lot of question marks going into that game. Didn't know what to expect out of this offense. Didn't know what to expect out of this quarterback. But something I saw in this game, and I went back and looked at some Bears games because I needed to see something that I saw in this game that I don't know if I saw as much when he was playing for the Bears. There were a couple of instances where Justin Fields found himself outside the pocket and, having a running lane, and I didn't see him take advantage of it. I saw him keeping his eyes downfield. And in a couple of those instances, it worked. And in fact, in a few of those situations, it worked. Kept his eyes downfield, made a play. And I didn't know. I watched him in college. Obviously, college is a different game than the NFL. I watched him in college, but I haven't watched much of him in the NFL. Had an outstanding 2022 season. We all know the history of this guy. Battled injuries throughout his career. It's all been well documented. But I don't know that I really had identified Justin Fields as a guy who gets out of the pocket and still keeps his eyes downfield. And what I saw in a couple of the Bears games I looked at is when he was getting outside the pocket and he was working to run, he was not keeping his eyes downfield. He would in scenarios. But for the most case, when he got outside the pocket, he was ready to run. And I think a lot of that has to do with how terrible the Bears' offensive line was while he was there. I think he was more running for his life. Now with the Jets, at least in the first game, a lot could change as the season progresses. Once defenses start getting an extra step, things might change. But now I'm seeing a guy who gets outside the pocket and he's still looking to play quarterback. And that's something that Aaron Glenn has preached throughout the entire offseason, is that he's going to trust Justin Fields to play quarterback. He wants him to run when it's necessary, and he wants him to play quarterback. And Justin Fields played an efficient week of football. That has probably been one of the funnest games to watch out of the quarterback position that Jets fans have had in a really long time. And obviously that bar is not high. We are not talking about a team that has history of great quarterback play, but it was entertaining. It had meaning. I feel like every time he touched the ball. Now he did struggle in the zone read options a couple of times. That's an area I think he needs to do better at decision making. Whether to hand it off or tuck it and run, that's an area that he could definitely work on, which I expect he will. This is a guy playing his first game in a new system, so anything can happen. But I truly do believe that Justin Fields seems to have turned a corner. And they say it happens when a player goes, a few stops, a few different systems, understands, what it takes to play quarterback. His third stop usually works out. You've seen it with Sam Darnold. His third stop went from Jets, Carolina. Actually, he had 4 stops: Jets, Carolina, San Fran, and then to Minnesota. And now he's actually with his 5th team. Baker went from Cleveland to LA, and then eventually now he's with Tampa. Maybe this is a situation where for once the Jets get the benefit of a player that maybe didn't have the best supporting cast after he was drafted, finding a home with a good offensive coordinator and a good supporting cast. Not supporting cast on the outside, more supporting cast on the inside with the offensive line and obviously Garrett Wilson. But yeah, I would call out here and call my X factor in this game has to be Justin Fields. And the reason why is because of his running ability. The Jets are going to need to extend drives. They're going to need to do things outside of the norm than what they're normally accustomed to. And the best way to do that is in situations you are going to need to extend drives the way that he did in week 1, whether it be through the air or whether it be through your legs. There was a situation late in the game, and I rewatched it because live I felt like on that 4th down play, I felt like he could have run for the first down, and maybe he could have, and maybe it was a slowdown of trying to get the ball out there past the Garrett Wilson, but against this team, in order for the Jets to have any shot in this game, and I see plenty of Bills fans in the chat saying Jets have no chance, Josh Allen's the Superman, there's plenty of guys in there. My Holy King, you're blowing up the chat. Obviously the Bills are favored this game by a touchdown. There's saying the Bills are going to win this game isn't kind of crying things out. It's a division game. Jets will play hard at home. I do think they'll play hard. But sorry, you're saying Josh Allen's not Superman. I thought I saw some Bills fan. My Holy King. I gotta learn how to read. But yeah, I don't know. I think Josh Allen's pretty much Superman, but I'll disagree there. But I see what you're trying to get. I see what you're trying to do. I appreciate you. Keep that chat live, my Holy King. But the Jets are going to need to extend drives. They're going to have to win this game in the trenches. They're going to have to win this game by time of possession. And in order to do that, this running game must be strong, and Justin Fields needs to play as efficient of a game as he did in week 1. And I think he will. I do think the Jets have hit something here. Maybe it extends a little bit further. You got a situation where there's familiarity. It's not like they brought in a quarterback that has no familiarity with anyone on this team. They brought in a guy that has some familiarity with a star player on this roster. Maybe there's some recruitment going on. Maybe there's some stuff like that with Garrett Wilson to bring in a former friend from a previous team. I appreciate Gyro. I'm going to jump here, hit the like button. I do appreciate it. Jet fans, do it. Bills fans, if you're in the chat, I think I saw some people in there earlier. Hit that like button. What's the worst that can happen? Unless you just really don't like me. I mean, that's option 2. Just don't dislike it if you can. Sharon, I'll go back to your message here in a moment here. Bears didn't know what they were doing with Fields. Steelers were just waiting for Wilson. Now it's Fields' real chance. I think I don't know if the Bears didn't know what they were doing with Fields. I just think they built the wrong way. I mentioned it earlier with the Dolphins too. They tried building from the outside in. They put plenty of skill players around Justin Fields. But Justin Fields was running for his life, and it led to injuries. I think the one thing you can do to a young quarterback to just destroy him is put him behind a weak offensive line. Quarterbacks will learn how to stand there and deliver a pass. They'll learn how to deal with pressure, but they cannot learn to play the quarterback position when there's pressure in their face on every play. And I think that was a major issue with Darnold when he was here. And Darnold kind of was a similar situation with Fields. There was potential there. There still is. Obviously, he got paid big time by Seahawks. So he did with the Vikings. In the right circumstances, Darnold can be successful. And let's not forget with Darnold, they brought in a freaking horrible offensive coordinator to be their head coach in Adam Gase, a failed Miami head coach. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely Fields' real chance. It's not like the Steelers last year where, like you mentioned, the Steelers were just waiting for Russell Wilson to be ready, and then once he was ready, obviously he had to be ready against the Jets in that miserable game. But that is definitely what was going on with Steelers. The Bears found themselves in a weird situation where they had the number one pick one year in a year that Fields missed some time, got injured, and then found themselves with number one pick, made a trade. Following year, the team they traded with ended up having the number one pick. So they ended up using that to draft a quarterback that they believed in, that many people believe was a generational guy, because that gets thrown out there every single draft. I can't wait for the next generational. Oh, Arch Manning is probably that guy. Everyone's calling generational here. But Sharon is high on the hopium. Listen, that's the beauty of the NFL season. When it first starts, the hopium is running high for a lot of fan bases. There's nothing wrong with being high on the hopium, especially with the product we got last week. Got to be happy with what we saw. Oh, my God. My holy king. Amen. Those were horrible days. The worst thing that happened to this team was going 7-9 that one year, and I think they started off like 2-7 or something like that, if I remember right. The worst thing that could have happened to this team was going 7-9 that year. That should have been their 2-14 or 3-13, 4-12 or whatever they could have done that year to assure Adam Gase got fired, but wasn't the case. We had to go one miserable year where we were hoping to land number one pick and beat the Rams out of all teams in LA. Sam Darnold's last little screw you to the Jets before beating us in week 1 the following year. But who's counting? A lot of fun chat, guys. I really appreciate all the comments. Keep them coming. I'm going to wrap this up here in a couple minutes. Here, I'm just going to my defensive X factor, and then give you my game prediction, and then sign off until tomorrow afternoon. If you're not subscribed to Bill's Mafia Report, sign up. Everyone that's in here, give us a watch. It's a lot of fun. I know we all hate the AFC East other teams, but these guys are fun. It's a good little experience. Sharon McLean, Jets fan since 1967. God bless. Yeah. At least you got to see something. Us other Jet fans we're just hoping. We're just dreaming and hoping, and we're keeping that hopium strong, and we're keeping hopium strong for you. Awesome to see a Jets fan in chat like that. My holy king, appreciate it. Let them know. Okay, so defensive X factor, and again, I gotta kind of get this wrapped up here. Jets defensive X factor. Listen, Josh Allen is an elite quarterback. He's arguably the best in the league. Can make that argument for Patrick Mahomes, blah, blah, all you want. Josh Allen is just on a different level right now. I think he's the best quarterback in the world, the way he's playing football. Won the MVP last year. Can argue it should have been Lamar Jackson, but that game last week, being down whatever it was, 15 points, whatever the score was at the time, didn't blink an eye. This guy had no issues. You looked in his face and you had no issue with the fact that they were down. You had no doubt in your mind that this guy was going to get the ball. He was going to get back frequently, and he was going to score some points. But in order for the Jets to have a shot with Josh Allen, there's always been a track record, especially when the Jets have played him. When there's a good enough linebacker that can trail Josh Allen, spy on him, play well in coverage, That's usually an area where Josh Allen tends to struggle. It was CJ Mosley for a while. You know, he was always out there. He was flying around the football, leader of the defense. He was a major catalyst to what gave Josh Allen fits when he was here. And while I think the secondary is a major red flag, I think they correct some of those issues. And I think that you look at this defensive line, I do believe they're going to build off what they did in week 1. Is it going to be as successful? I don't believe so. I think Steelers have a little bit more of a Bills have a better offensive line. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. But in order for the Jets to have some success against Josh Allen, they've got to have a linebacker that can run with him, that can chase him around, that can keep him honest, that can cover the tight ends, because the tight ends are going to be a critical factor, as they usually are in this Buffalo Bills offense, that can watch the screen game with Cook out of the backfield. All these different factors are going to need to be kind of dot your I's, cross your T's, because these are the areas of the game that the Bills exploit teams that maybe don't have enough speed at the linebacker position. So my defensive X factor and the player I'm looking at in this game to really rebound from a bad play call, from a really game-changing play in week 1, his roughing penalty on the tackle out of bounds. My defensive X factor is Quincy Williams. And for all those factors, I think he is a player that can dominate in the screen game. He's coming into a contract year. He kind of needs to perform well in order to kind of get that next big contract that he's hoping and willing to get. And I think this is a big game for him against a guy in Josh Allen that, has played well against the Jets over the last couple seasons. Outside of that week 1, victory for the Jets against the Bills, it's kind of been tilted more in the Bills' direction these last 3 games. So I do like a situation here where Quincy Williams kind of maybe takes that next step. He's been an outstanding linebacker, all-pro, but I'd like to see him take an additional step here in a game where the Jets really need strong defensive play. I'd like for him to be the one to step up in this game as our X factor. Plenty of other guys you could point to. This defensive line is full of them. Quinton Williams up the middle, applying pressure. I think I brought him up a little bit. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson was actually one I was actually eyeballing before Quincy Williams. I was kind of at a toss-up between the two of them. But both those guys obviously are going to be critical. It really is tied front sevens to be critical, and this back 5 need to do something way better. So yeah, that's kind of my prediction here. Offensive X factor: Justin Fields, can he build on an efficient week 1 and bring it into week 2? And Quincy Williams, can he rebound from a bad, a game-changing play in week 1 to eventually being a hero in week 2? See a couple chats come in. I'll check on one of you guys. Sherwood was the lowest graded linebacker last game. Williams outplayed him. Sherwood was getting manhandled. He has to step up. Yeah, especially with that contract. Yeah, definitely needs – this defense as a whole needs to be better. You can't give up 34 points to Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense. It's unacceptable. Alrighty, so now time for the game prediction. And feel free, guys, enter the chat. Give me your thoughts on the game prediction as well. But I will give you my prediction here. A lot of optimism around the Jets. A lot of positivity. Aaron Glenn had an outstanding first week of the season. But the Bills are a uniform that they're a team that comes in here with Super Bowl aspirations. They're favored by many across the league to be in the Super Bowl and eventually win it. It's a tall ask for a young coaching staff, in their second game to go up against the number 1 quarterback in the league, the number 1 team in the league, potentially a team that's building off of a very successful win. You do have the option potentially of a down game after such a high in that first game of the season. But unfortunately, I would love for this to be upset, and I know my headline says an upset's possible. I see this as a Bills win. Gonna go 33-27. That week 1 performance by his defense was alarming to me enough where I have concerns where Aaron Rodgers may not be the quarterback he once was, still a decent quarterback, but Josh Allen is the best in the world. And the Bills have a much stronger offensive line than the Steelers do. They have better skill players. Maybe they don't have a DK Metcalf and a guy at the top of the rotation. But Khalil Shakir is damn solid. Keon Coleman is kind of working his way into a secondary option type of player. So that's kind of my prediction there. So yeah, Bills winning 33-27 final score. Let me know what you guys think. And that's really it. I mean, that's what I got here. Again, this isn't a bad thing. Jets being 0-2 obviously would suck, but if they can keep this thing close, who knows? The Bulls, as I mentioned earlier, this first game, the ball hit the floor 3 times. If the Jets recover it twice instead of the Steelers recovering it all 3 times, or even once, they don't even need it twice. Jets recover it once out of those 3 times, you're talking about a different game, and that's how the NFL is. It's a game of, making those small plays down the stretch to change the outcome of a football game. Can the Jets bounce on those footballs? Can they make the critical plays? Can Brandon Stevens not drop a football that hits him dead in the hands as he's slipping? That's another situation. We are not talking as terribly about Brandon Stevens if he makes that catch late in the game. But yeah, Jets 0-2 still can win the next 3 games. My holy king. Yeah, I mean, the next 3 games don't look terrible. I'm going to try and go to the Tampa game. I'm down here in Florida. I'm going to try and go to the Tampa game at least. We'll see if I can get to the Dolphins game. I'm trying to do a Mets-Dolphins weekend because the Mets play the Marlins that week, but we'll see what the Mets are even playing for. But yeah, anything's possible, man. It's we've seen some crazy stuff happen in this league. By then, hopefully this culture has been updated and changed and worked its way through. Josh Allen plays nervous at MetLife. Still think the Jets can win. I don't think they can't win. I think it's unlikely. I'll get at. Tough games early will make us stronger. Love it, Sharon. Love the positive on that. It's true. I mean, and another thing too, you get tough games out of the way early in the year. Then, obviously things smooth out for the rest of the year. Is another way to look at it too. But we'll see what this team ends up being. But yeah, love the comments in the chat. Love all you guys. Appreciate you guys joining the chat. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate all the support. If you haven't, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. Appreciate all the support. Let's go Jets.